Okay, I want you to imagine something. Imagine you're lost in an ocean so vast, it's actually larger than all of Earth's continents combined. A place where islands are just tiny, tiny dots in a seemingly endless blue void. Well, for one man, this wasn't just imagination. It was his reality. 438 days. Just let that sink in for a second. That's more than 14 months. It's how long one man survived totally alone, adrift in the Pacific Ocean. It is, to this day, the world record for solo survival at sea.
So the big question is, how? How is that even possible? What does it take for a person to endure something so unimaginable and actually live to tell the tale? Well, let's get into it. All right, so let's start with the man himself, the man who holds a world record that absolutely no one would ever want to break. Meet Jose Salvador Alvarenga. Back in 2012, he was a 36-year-old fisherman living in a small village in Mexico. And it's important to know, this guy wasn't some novice tourist. He was an expert. He knew the sea inside and out. But as you're about to see, no amount of experience could have possibly prepared him for what was coming. You know, the craziest thing about this whole ordeal is that it didn't start with some huge, dramatic disaster. It started with a plan that was completely and totally routine, just a simple, short fishing trip. So the date is November 17th, 2012. Alvarenga and a companion, they head out for what was supposed to be a 30-hour fishing run. Their boat? A small, 7-meter open-top boat with just a single engine. They had a big icebox for their catch and, well, just enough supplies for the day. That's it.
And then, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. A massive storm just descends on them, 120 kilometers from shore. For 6 agonizing hours, they race back towards land, ditching their gear to go faster. They could see the coast. They were just 20 kilometers away. And then the engine died. They grabbed the radio. They managed to shout their location to their boss. But before our response could even come back, the battery went dead. Silence. And just like that, they were adrift. No engine, no radio, absolutely no control. They were completely at the mercy of the wind and the currents, which immediately began pushing them further and further and further out to sea.
Now, to really understand what they were up against, you have to get your head around the sheer scale of the Pacific Ocean. It isn't just big, it's larger than all of Earth's landmass combined. Being lost out there, it's like being a single grain of sand in all the deserts on the planet at once. Now, their boss did send out a search party, but it was just hopeless. In only 5 days, the winds had already pushed their tiny little boat 450 kilometers out. They were blown into a part of the ocean where there's just nothing. Nothing but water in every direction. The search party never stood a chance. So this is where the story gets truly incredible. How do you survive with absolutely nothing? The answer, it turns out, is a mix of raw creativity and a kind of resilience that just redefines what the human body and the human mind can possibly endure.
Alvarenga's core fisherman's instincts just took over. He figured out how to catch fish, seabirds, even giant turtles with nothing but his bare hands, and he ate them raw. For water, he'd collect rain in any plastic bottle he could find floating by, and when the rain stopped for weeks on end, he had to resort to something unthinkable. He drank turtle blood just to stay hydrated. I mean, it's a diet that would destroy most of us, but for him, it was the only thing standing between him and death.
The physical battle was immense, but the mental toll, that was crushing. 4 months in, his companion just gave up hope and passed away, leaving Alvarenga utterly alone. The psychological weight of that kind of isolation is something few of us can even comprehend. Then, 6 months in, a cargo ship passed nearby. A moment of soaring hope, just completely obliterated when it sailed right on by, totally oblivious. By month 11, he drifted over 8,000 kilometers. Then at month 14, after an eternity of nothing but blue, something finally changed. Coconuts, floating in the water. Those coconuts, they were the sign he had been praying for over a year. For the first time, the empty horizon wasn't quite so empty anymore. Land was near. And soon he saw it, a small island. He was terrified that the current would just sweep him right past his one and only chance. So he abandoned the boat that had been his prison and his refuge for all that time, and he swam for his life. On January 30th, 2014, after 438 days at sea, Jose Salvador Alvarenga finally stood on solid ground. He had drifted 11,000 kilometers from where he started. And his luck? It was almost as unbelievable as his endurance. He landed on a place called Ibon Atoll, a tiny, remote coral island in the Marshall Islands. It is a mere dot in the ocean. And get this, if the currents had been just slightly different, if he had missed that one single dot, the next possible place to land was the Philippines, another 5,000 kilometers away.
But surviving at sea was really only one ordeal. Returning to the world, to civilization, brought a whole new set of human challenges.
And the most difficult challenge of all centered on his lost companion. Alvarenga's account has never, ever changed. His partner lost hope, refused to eat, and eventually starved. But the companion's family, desperate for answers, they later filed a lawsuit accusing Alvarenga of cannibalism. And that accusation casts a really dark shadow over his miraculous survival, a tragic, complicated final chapter in an already harrowing story. But, regardless of any controversy, his own words really capture the sheer terror that he must have endured for 438 straight days. Alvarenga's story of survival is almost impossible to fully comprehend, and it really forces us to look inward. When you're faced with absolute emptiness, when you are stripped of everything you know, what are the true limits of human endurance?